All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I'm happy to see everybody on today for our next live event webinar. This time we're going to be covering Oracle and how we do that licensing in SAM. I saw from the chat we have a lot of people from many different parts of the world, so welcome. We appreciate you making the time. And let's get started. A couple quick announcements before we do jump into the content. Some of the information here is privileged and confidential, so just bear that in mind. This is information that we want to share with you. In addition, as we answer questions or show demonstrations of the product today, some of the comments that we make or statements are forward-looking in nature, so they are subject to change. All right, with that out of the way, a big welcome to everybody again. This is part of our commitment to help deliver value to our customers in their implementation and investment in software asset management. We want everybody to get as much information as they can so that they can be successful in their journey. And today we're going to focus on Oracle. And to do that, I've also brought on folks from my team. You probably already know myself, and you probably already know Abhi. We've been hosting these events for quite some time now. And you probably have a familiar face in Rohit. Rohit's one of our senior managers in the product management team. He oversees software asset management, and he's involved in a lot of different areas of our product. So I've invited him today to speak on Oracle, and we're going to learn from him on how that is managed in the product. Rohit, I know you're out there. Thanks for joining us, and appreciate you making the time today.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So this is what we're going to cover today. 3 key areas. We're going to start with the software license compliance equation. That's what I like to call it. We'll jump into what that means, kind of creates the framework of the conversation. But then we're going to go into the content itself, which is more around Oracle licensing and how we do that in the product. And then I've asked Rohit to put together a brief demo just to give you guys a feel for how this looks like in the product. If you have any questions during the course of this conversation here, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A form. Any comments, use the chat form, and we'll get to those at the end. If there's something that pops up that is worthwhile looking into, I'll raise that up with Rohit during the conversation. Couple other things, just stay laser focused on the topics of the day. So if we're talking about, for example, WebLogic, keep the questions on WebLogic. If we move to Java, then transition your questions into Java. Share time with others. We might have a lot of questions coming in, and we don't want to get the questions from the same individual. And then contribute what you know. I mean, a lot of you out there are in this space, have been working with software asset management for some time. You have something to share. So please do share that. We want to make this collaborative. So without further ado, let's get started. And the first thing I'm going to cover here is the software license compliance equation. So what I'll say here is, I want to get a better understanding of what we mean by this equation. And the way that I've always looked at it, Rohit, is you have really 2 key ingredients. You have entitlements and you have software installations. And you're essentially doing some type of comparison between the 2, which results in a set of outputs, whether it's you're under licensed or you're over licensed, or you have an equilibrium between those licenses. In your experience and with what you've done so far in the product, how does that play out for customers? What do you see kind of being the majority of the case with customers, or what are some things that you think are trouble issue areas when it comes to this equation?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Victor. I think I've seen a broad spectrum. It depends on the publishers. Obviously, it's a very simplistic entitlements and software installations, and you compare them and you get to an effective license position, right? But really, it becomes the devil's in the details in this one. Typically, I've seen customers when they just get started on a SAM journey, they're typically over licensed in a lot of cases for most publishers. For other publishers like Oracle, depending upon their virtualization and how they're running the Oracle databases or the Oracle technology, they might be under licensed quite significantly. So that's really the value that the tool brings, right? It gives you a view of that risk that you carry, both from a financial perspective, which is compliance, right? As well as, if you're over licensed, opportunity cost there, like, the excess money you've spent. So.
Yeah. Yes, I see that. So essentially this equation gives you both opportunity, and it also gives you ways to mitigate risk, right? So you mentioned opportunity. You're talking about when you're over licensed, you can optimize your environment, perhaps. Is that what you're alluding to there?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
And then when it comes, go ahead.
Yeah, getting your contracts right sized, making sure that you've got the licenses correctly deployed, correctly assigned to your virtualization technologies, and also that you're using your virtualization technology correctly, that you understand the licensing implications of deploying an Oracle database on a VMware, for example.
And when you refer to under license, then you're really referring to mitigating risk, capturing points where you might be in a compliance issue area, and you need to mitigate that as quickly as possible.
Correct.
Excellent. Now let's look at how this overlays with the product. So I think here we have the platform of the product, and we talked about entitlements. So entitlements are really covering your purchase areas. What are some examples of areas where you're bringing in purchase information, Rohit?
So I think just your from your software contracts, right? You're buying software from your vendors like Oracle. Those contracts need to be translated into the software asset management tool, so we understand what the product is, the metric that you're going to use to measure it, the cost that the price that you paid for it, so we can track your spend, and then also just to make sense of it, right? That part number that you get, your content service would help you kind of really understand what that is and how it translates to the software inventory that you're running in your environment.
So that information, the entitlement, is created by the SAM manager. It's created by bringing in information from the procurement systems. It's ingested into SAM. That's one side of the equation. The other is the raw inventory. What can you mention there about raw inventory?
I think this is just your discovery tools, right? ServiceNow Discovery or any third-party inventory tool that you might have, or in the case of SaaS, it might be your subscriptions, your direct integrations with your vendor portal or SSO. Just bringing in all of that usage information, right? Your inventory information into the system, and then again using our content service to kind of recognize and understand what that software is that you're running, and then through a process called normalization.
Excellent. So then you bring in the raw inventory. It goes through that content service. I'll call it a cleanup, if you will. You're really normalizing data because your data is different from an entitlement perspective as it is in raw inventory. Then you get into compliance, right? So what can you say about compliance? That's part of our reconciliation, if you will.
Yeah, and I think compliance is where I think you alluded to the equation in the previous slide, right? Where you look at your entitlements and your software installs, and then you match them up, and then you see where you stand from an effective license position. That's really the goal here, right? To get to the primary goal, I would say, not the only one. Primary goal is to get to an effective license position, to understand where you stand, and then from there, to take actions on that.
And what kind of actions could we take as a customer here? It looks like we can mitigate, we can optimize. It's all of those that you mentioned before, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think those are the fundamental operations of any that you perform with any software asset management tool. Mitigate risk, for true ups that you might need to buy additional licenses for. You might want to cut your overspend on licenses that you don't need. You might want to also look at the next level, which is usage, for the folks that you have, or for the servers that you've deployed Oracle software on. Are you really using that software correctly? And how do you kind of optimize that?
Oh, that's great. I think the other two key things that we have here as well, though, is once you have that data normalized, there's other things you can do in the platform, right? So it's one thing to say, hey, we're focusing on our compliance position, getting the effective license position out there, mitigating and taking opportunity actions related to that. But then if you are part of that platform ecosystem, there's also other things that you could do, right? So that further enhances your capabilities with SAM.
Absolutely. And that's really the core, the differentiator for ServiceNow software asset management tool. The fact that we run on a platform, that's a significant strategic advantage for our customers. They could leverage this information across the asset lifecycle, right, all the way from request to retirement of the asset, to enable value, vulnerabilities and end of life cycles, end of support, understanding your license changes and the cost impacts of that. When new employees come in, for example, with HR, onboarding, what software do they need to get started and be productive on day one? And offboarding when they leave the organization, how do you ensure that you don't have allocations that are just, lying out there, being used by somebody who's no longer in the organization? So this is really the core differentiator with SAM running on the platform.
No, I appreciate that. So that's the framework there, right? So that's what we're going to use as we dive into Oracle. So we're going to look at entitlements, software installations, and what does that mean from the effective license position. So let's jump into that because there's a lot of Oracle details to get into. And before we jump into these specific ones, I'd like to see from the audience, what has been kind of the biggest pain point for you for Oracle? Has it been Oracle database and options? Has it been moving from an on-prem to a cloud environment where you're bringing your own licenses? Has it been managing unlimited license agreements? Is it WebLogic or is it Java? We'll give it another 15, 20 seconds here. Excellent. I see a lot for Oracle database. Wrap it up in about 5 seconds here. All right. Let's end the poll there. So what do you think, Rohit? We have a large number of customers that are having pain points with Oracle database, but then we also have an increasing number of folks that say Java is causing a pain in their neck.
No, yeah, I see this, and this kind of aligns with my conversations with customers and the field, right? Database and options is probably the number one of the most expensive Oracle products out there. Mm-hmm. And then we know about Java, right? The changes that Oracle has been making with the licensing. So aligns with what I'm hearing as well.
No, that's awesome. That's great. And for those folks that have questions, again, reminder, just bring them into the question form and we'll get to those as well. Okay, so it's natural then that we'll jump into Oracle capabilities here, and then we will talk about Oracle database. So let's just kick it off with what is capable today in the product.
Sure, Victor. So I think from a capability perspective, we are an Oracle verified vendor, right? That's the number one capability that I'd want to call out. So Oracle has actually verified our discovery outputs and has verified them as accurate and what they would need for their license management. We obviously have the ability to discover Oracle deployed on premise as well as on the cloud. That's the capability that we've had for a while. AWS, Azure, Google, IBM. We have Oracle database options, packs, usage reporting, and I have a bit of a demo for you on this. So there's some extensive capabilities with options and packs, and I see that a lot of the audience here was interested in database options and packs as the pain points, right? So we actually use LMS scripts now for reporting on options and pack usage. We have WebLogic server, we have Java, EULA support. We have the most, from a virtualization perspective, we have the largest virtualization provider is VMware. And of course, that's soft partitioning, but then for IBM and Oracle, we support hard partition environments as well.
Oh, that's
we
great.
have the processor and named user plus metrics, as well as the BYOL support for the public cloud. So pretty extensive, broad set of capabilities. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on these. In the subsequent slides.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's jump into virtualization because you mentioned that. So how much virtualization do we cover and from what vendors?
Yeah, so for soft partitioning, we have support for VMware, which is one of the largest providers in the market. We have very extensive capabilities on VMware. We actually take into account the different ESX versions as well as the vCenter versions, right? Because the rules are different based on the technology, the vMotion and other technology that VMware has been building as they progressively move up through these VMware versions, right? 5.0 is obviously pretty old, but some customers still do have it. So we've got rules in place to how to handle Oracle licensing on that as well. Mm-hmm. We account for shared storage constraints, for example, on the older technology where the database can't be moved beyond the storage. And of course, we have the ability to also manage your host affinity rules as well. So if you have host affinity rules and you've negotiated that in your contracts with Oracle for restricting your license obligation, you can configure the system to honor that. So lots of very extensive capabilities. And I'll talk a little bit more about VMware in the next slide, but I'll move on to hard partitioning, right? So IBM and Oracle Solaris, these are the two vendors that we support hard partitioning for. We take into account all of the parameters that IBM and Solaris both have to ensure, the hard partitioning calculations are done correctly. So you can rest assured that, the compliance position that you're getting is the obligations are limited to the partitions that you're using.
Let's jump into that VMware. It sounds like we have additional reporting for that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So as some of you in the audience might know that, with VMware, as they've progressively built their technology, for vMotion capabilities and how VMs can be migrated across clusters, and in some cases now, if through compatible networks across vCenters as well, all of that depends on the vCenter version, the ESX version that you're running. And so we have the ability, we've built the rules in the system to take into account your VMware versions and to understand what the capability of the technology is, and then apply the correct licensing rules for you. So for example, if you're running a VMware 7 Plus or 6 Plus, a vCenter 6 Plus, those VMs can in theory move, be moved manually from one vCenter to another vCenter, right, across the network. And so when Oracle looks at your license position, they will ask you to license, both the vCenters, right? And so we take that into account and give you that visibility as to what, based on the version that you're running, what your license obligation would be. And I think that's a powerful capability. And of course, you have the ability to then use host affinity to reduce your spend if you've, negotiated that with Oracle and you've built and you kept the log of from the vCenter, if you've kept the log of and the proof that you've not moved the VM, you
Yep.
could, you'll have that data as well as an ability to configure.
Oh, that's great, because then you can address any issues or miscommunications on the movement of those virtualized environments.
I must say though, Victor, that Oracle by default doesn't accept that. So it's something that we have provided in the tool as a capability for customers to use if they're able to have that built to the contract.
I see. Okay, good caveat. Thanks for that. A general question here from my side. Are there other virtualization technologies that we're looking at that we're going to invest in the future by chance?
Yeah, we're looking at Microsoft Hyper-V, Nutanix, some of those additional technologies that are up and coming. And I want to ask the audience if there's additional technologies that you've seen that you're using in your environment that you'd like us to look at, please post those and, we'll pick that up.
Yeah, that's great. If anyone else is using anything that we didn't talk about, any other virtualization technologies we haven't mentioned, feel free to throw those in the chat and we'll capture those. Thanks for that feedback. So Rohit, let's talk about moving from on-prem to cloud and the BYOL options that we have for Oracle.
Yeah, sure. So, we've seen over the years that our customers have moved, from on-premise to sort of hybrid environments where they have some workloads in the cloud, some workloads in the public cloud, and some on a private cloud, as well as on-premise. And so we've seen these sort of hybrid deployments among most of our customer base. And so we've built the ability for our customers to be able to really look at their estate, the Oracle estate across these environments, right? And whether you're completely outsourcing your Oracle database as an interest and just buying infrastructure from an Amazon or an Azure, right? Which is a license included kind of deployment, we can handle that. If you just move the database to the cloud, but you're still responsible for the license, which is your BYOL, we can handle that as well. And we can report on seamlessly, give you a single pane of glass view of your estate, both on-prem as well as on the cloud, just from that license workbench. We can also call out EULA risks. I know some of you might know that, with your EULA licenses, any database licenses purchased through the EULA, you cannot deploy on an AWS or Azure cloud. Typically, that's not built into the EULA contract. And so we can highlight some of those risks for you to pay attention to as well when your upcoming EULA renewals are going on.
Yeah. Have you seen in your experience with a lot of customers, have there been a lot of customers that are in this transition, or do they balance their environments and have a hybrid environment where they're doing a lot of BYOL licensing and still keeping on-prem, or what's been the trend that you've seen amongst customers?
The trend has been to move to the cloud, Victor. I've seen that across many of the conversations that I've had. And it brings, I think that's a good point because it brings additional complexity. I think that's worth calling out because the rules for licensing in the cloud are kind of different from, on-prem, right? The minimums that you have to apply, the vCPUs, how they translate to the minimums for various calculations, all of those add additional nuances, which is why you need a software asset management tool to tell you, do the heavy lifting behind the scenes so you have a clean view of where your risks lie.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for that, Rohit. So one of the biggest elephants in the room, perhaps and one of the biggest questions, most common questions, is whether SAM is a third-party verified tool. I think you opened up by saying it is, but let's clear the air on this topic a little bit more and talk about that as well as Oracle GLAS.
Sure. Yeah. So I think so we've been verified as a third-party tool by Oracle, both for middleware as well as database, right? And Java is on the near-term roadmap, so we'll get verified in Java soon as well. So essentially, what this does is the verification ensures that our discovery data, for usage in your environment is verified by Oracle and consumable by their license management services team. And so the advantage to you is that, when you go into an audit with Oracle typically sends you an audit letter, and from there you proceed. They send you scripts to run in your environment. Those scripts takes a lot of approvals, right? You have to get those approvals from your legal, from your InfoSec team and security teams before you can actually run them. There's multiple cycles there, several weeks of approvals and non-value added work. So here with this, now you have the ability to just, on the click of a button, just export that data that the script would have done for you and just zip it up and send it to Oracle. So it reduces all of that additional work, those cycles that you would have spent. And then not just that, it actually allows you to, analyze that data before you send it to Oracle, right? So you know now what Oracle's LMS team would be seeing about your environment, about your deployments before they do. So you can walk into those negotiations armed with all that information and negotiate from a position of strength for your contract renewals.
Oh, I like that. That's great. So you have the information in front of you so that you can be talking apples to apples with Oracle. That's fantastic. Let's dive in a little bit deeper into that. So how do you actually leverage the capability? What exactly are we doing with Oracle GLAS and the data collection process?
Yeah, so the Oracle GLAS is a store app that's available. It's free. It's built by the ITOM discovery team. And what we've done with that GLAS store app is we've embedded Oracle's LMS scripts just as they are without any modifications whatsoever into that GLAS app. So when you click on the button to export the data, all it's doing is it's exporting the very same data that the Oracle LMS scripts would export for you. And then the advantage that we have here is that software asset management can now leverage that very same accurate usage data for licensing purposes as well, right? So we go off that same source of truth, that same discovery data that Oracle's LMS team would be seeing now within SAM as well to tell you what your license position is.
Yeah.
So it's a powerful capability. Yeah.
Super, because now you actually get to see all the levels of detail that are being collected, right? So if we go to the next slide, I think we have here the list of what is actually being collected. So any comments that you want to make around this, other than what you've already mentioned, Rohit?
Yeah, no, I think that I've already kind of covered this. It's, and I know a lot of the audience was interested in Oracle database and options. And so when you look at the GLAS data collected, the Oracle options is one of them. And so we use that same Oracle options usage data, which goes down to the feature level to understand what the actual option being used is. And so, and I'll show you some of this as we go into the demo as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So we'll hold a little bit on this to get into the demo. We'll cover a couple other items here. The next one is about unlimited license agreement and unlimited license agreement support. What could you mention about this, Rohit? I believe this is coming out here in Utah, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah. So we have the ability to track unlimited licenses. We've had the ability to report on these entitlements in the tool, so you can see your usage against these entitlements already in the tool. What this does is it allows you to state that you're still compliant, but it reports on your usage of your licenses, your database and option licenses. And so, many of our customers have told us, hey, I'm on an unlimited license agreement, but it's the tool's telling me that I'm not compliant. So now, you not only can see your usage, so you set your baseline when you get your EULA set up, you get your baseline, and then you look at your usage at the time of, your internal process, right, to monitor your compliance. And then it'll show you that you're compliant, but it'll show you what your usage is against that baseline.
I see. Because now with that extra layer of information, you know exactly how much usage you have while you're still covered by the EULA agreement. Great. Another item here was WebLogic. I know that a couple folks were having issues with this one. So as we transition now, talking about middleware, what can we say about WebLogic? What's new for us today in WebLogic?
Yeah, so WebLogic, we currently support Oracle WebLogic for both NUP as well as the processor metrics for standard and enterprise editions. There is a higher level WebLogic edition called the WebLogic Suite, which currently is on our near-term roadmap, which we'll be building soon. So standard and enterprise editions, we can support WebLogic for you, both on-prem as well as on AWS and Azure clouds.
That's great. Any particular reporting around WebLogic?
Yeah, it's the same as the Oracle database, right? We give you a view of your WebLogic deployment, both on-prem as well as on the cloud. We'll tell you how many processors. Again, we look at your virtualization, all of those rules, right? Whether you're soft partitioned, hard partitioned, we'd look at all of that detail and then surface that compliance information to you, so you can take action on that.
Perfect. And lastly, Java. So I think this was the second most pain point area that the audience today was facing. What could we say about Java?
Yeah, so we have extensive capabilities on Java, right? We can discover and track your Java licensable versions. So as you know, Java versions 1 through 8 was under the BCL agreement, right? But then if you were using a commercial feature on that, you would have to still carry a license. It was up until Java 8, it was free for general purpose use, right? Email, browsing, things like that. But if you're using Java, like the MSIs or the mission control or the flight recorder, which are commercial features, you'd have to carry a license for that. So our tool allows you to discover those commercial features using file-based discovery. So that, along with as Oracle has progressed along with Java from patch 2.11 plus or Java 11 onwards, it became paid Java, right? So you have that ability in the tool to model. It's a licensable software for those versions. And from 17 onwards, again, it's not a paid solution again. So Java 17 onwards becomes free. So you have the ability to configure your software asset management tool to manage all these different scenarios based on the Java versions that you're running.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because I could just lose my mind just trying to track version specific nuances and rules that I need, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Any other comments on Java before we jump into your demo?
Yeah, I think we do support the processor and NUP metrics, but I think everybody's seen the announcement from Oracle this year in Jan, where they've introduced the new employee metric. And so I think that's something that's on a near-term roadmap that they're looking at. And in the meantime, I think customers are, what I've seen is that Oracle's allowing customers to grandfather their processor and NUP licenses, if that's the contract that they had. And so, customers can continue to use their processor and NUP licenses for the existing consumption. So yeah, that's one of the changes that I'm aware of. And I think, I'm not sure if the audience had put up Java as a pain point because of that, but just wanted to kind of address that quickly.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. And it's great to see that there's a lot of coverage already out of the gate for SAM within Oracle. And it's great to also hear from you that there's a lot more to come. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's transition then to the demo. I think a lot of folks are probably here because they want to just see the product and get a feel for what they can get out of the Oracle database feature here?
Sure. Let me just bring up my environment.
Sure, no problem. And again, reminder for those of you asking any questions, we will get to those at the end of the session here. I'll start looking through those while Rohit's doing his demo and see if I can answer any offline. Other than that, feel free to continue asking us questions in the chat form. Excuse me, in the Q&A form. Okay.
All right, Victor, should I just share my screen then?
Yeah,
or?
just steal it away.
Okay. Cool. Let me get into this. So you can see my desktop here.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so I'm currently in the Oracle GLAS, ITOM GLAS app. And so I'm in the Oracle GLAS data collection menu. So if you see here with, based on the discovery that has run, the scripts that have run, the dashboard kind of surfaces to you the discovered Oracle instances, the different database versions that are running. Then the actual GLAS data, this is the scripts from Oracle, right? That the Glassdoor app has embedded. And so when these scripts run, it collects these data, all this data, and then populates these tables for you. So you have a view of all of your LMS script GLAS data in these tables over here. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the Oracle options, it will actually show you your database name, the machine, the instance, right? And then there is these, if you get into these different columns over here, this is the actual output from the GLAS LMS scripts. So it'll show you, what are the options and all the different features that, that have been enabled. And so, and also the users that have enabled these features. So what we have done is, so you can see this is pretty rich information, right? It's 7,800 records just from my test instance.
Yep.
So we have actually analyzed this data, right, to figure out the signals that indicate that an active data guard or an advanced compression is in use. And the reason why it may or may not be in use is it depends on the users that are actually creating these, using these features. So for example, table compression is one of the features for advanced compression, but it's actually being done by Sysman, which is a system user, and that doesn't count towards licensing, for you because it's performed by the system. Yep. So this would not be a signal for licensing for you, right? Mm-hmm. Oracle will look for your users using the features, not their internal system users. So we have a whole library of system users that we've built into this to exclude that information from licensing. And so here, if you look into, so that's just the GLAS data, but then what happens after that? Remember I mentioned we analyzed that data. So just wanted to show you some of the logic that we use, and it's a pretty powerful capability. So in terms of the different features, remember I mentioned the different features for the different options. So we actually look at all these different features, right? For advanced compression, you could be using any of these features, and some of them are, available only from later releases. So we take even that into account. So usage of any of these features would translate to, advanced compression being used, right? And so we have that for all the different various options that that Oracle ships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we also sorry, Rohit, there is a question I want to ask. I saw it in the chat here. This GLAS feature, what release is it available on?
Yeah, starting from when? San Diego. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fantastic. So folks that are San Diego and above are able to do all this work here that we're showing. Continue. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah. So I think you saw, I just wanted to show you one example of one feature, right? This backup low compression, right, is being used on this 11.2 LMS 15 machine, right? It's the Oracle database 11.2. So, so this usage then needs to carry a license. And so I just wanted to show you how we kind of quickly use this information on our license dashboard to report on your license obligations for advanced compression. So if you go now to your license usage and click on the Oracle tile there, I'll drill into the Oracle database server. And if you look at your software model for advanced compression. So this is the database server enterprise with the advanced compression option. Okay, so that's the software model. And it has already calculated, this is your licenses zone, this is your entitlements, and this is your licenses required. If you drill down from here, and this is how you can actually verify and have confidence on the data and the SAM tool that's reporting up to you. So if you see here, the machine that we had found that backup low compression, the database which was using backup low compression, is listed over here in this, right? And it's calculating the licenses required for that. So all of that information that you see from GLAS is used to report on your compliance for Oracle. So that's the demo, Victor.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's great. I want to see if anybody has any questions. Again, please throw them in the Q&A form. Our next segment here is to actually go through those questions together. So let's do that. I did see one question in the chat, Rohit, about discovery. So can somebody use something like SCCM to do this type of data collection discovery? We'll start with that question.
Yeah, so we've had this question come from several customers on alternate discovery sources. So what I'll say here is that while in theory, it's possible, SCCM is typically a desktop usage reporting tool, right? It typically is not used in the server world. But I've had customers ask me about Tanium and, other things, right? Whether we can use some of those for data center discovery. So my answer to them has been, in theory, there's a set of tables, right, that you need to populate data with. And a lot of those tools don't have the capability to kind of pull the information that's needed to really populate those tables. And you'll have a lot of effort going into just making sure that data is correctly populated, correctly maintained, so that your license obligation reporting is correct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All those very complex data center use cases are built into ITOM Discovery. As you've seen, the Oracle GLAS store app has those LMS scripts in it, right? So it's already kind of built in out of the box for you. A lot of that will have to be replicated into those other tools for you to be able to get to value with Oracle. So we typically don't recommend anything outside of ITOM Discovery for data center use cases, just because of the complexity. And it's not just Oracle, it's Microsoft SQL Server, it's Windows Server. There's a lot of nuances and attributes, BYOL, right? The cloud that need to be collected for you to get an accurate position. And ITOM Discovery is best positioned for that.
Thanks for clarifying that, Rohit. Let's stay on that subject of discovery. Another question that we got here was, for discovery with respect to database, is there a specific setup that is needed, or can the standard out-of-the-box ServiceNow discovery methods be used?
Yeah, the existing patterns that we have that I showed you, for Oracle discovery on-prem or on the cloud, there's the Oracle patterns that if you've deployed them, you should be able to use all those out-of-the-box patterns. In addition, for options and database options and management packs, I showed you the Oracle GLAS app. That's the one additional store app that's available for free on the store that you'll be able to use in conjunction with your discovery to get to value with Oracle database. But this is all out of the box, what I showed you today.
Fantastic. So there's no extended patterns, if you will, that are necessary. What you get out of the box with ITOM,
correct,
you combine that with Oracle GLAS, and you have what you need to do all that
correct
data collection. Okay.
Yes. To Joanne's question, yes, you need applicative credentials for GLAS for accessing all those, just like you do for patterns.
Fantastic. Any other prerequisites for using GLAS that we need to make mention of?
No, I think it's just, setting it up, going through discovery setup. There's, as Joanne correctly mentioned, there's a whole bunch of credentials that you need to make sure that, the pattern has access to those machines. So all those are applicative credentials that you need to provide to the system to get your discovery set up. But once you're set up, the out-of-the-box capability should work.
Fantastic. One of the things that I've done with customers whenever they're testing new discovery in a new environment is to test in smaller portions to ensure that you have the right credentials in place and validate that the information that's coming from those devices are accurate. Any other implementation suggestions that you would make on your side?
Yeah, we have the health checks store app, right? I think that's something that we've built recently to help our customers navigate some of these complex missing data, missing virtualization relationships. Sometimes the CPU or core counts don't come through correctly, or the applicative credentials are not correctly set up. So we have the health checks store app that's available with software asset management, right? With your software asset management pro license. So you should just be able to, use that store app to diagnose your Oracle environment and see where there are missing pieces of information that you need to resolve to get to an accurate position and to have that confidence on your Oracle data.
Oh, that's great.
So definitely leverage the health check store app.
Yeah, so that's to check the configuration of your current environment to see if something's outstanding or missing.
Correct.
And if that doesn't work, I would say also you could also raise a high ticket case just to see what support can do to investigate your instance. But for the most part, being as quick and being as efficient as you are, being out of the box, using the health checks, you should be in a position where you can start bringing in that information. Another question I saw here was, is this data automatically reported to Oracle?
No, it is not, Victor. It's the customer still has to export the data, zip the file, and then send it to Oracle.
Okay.
So
great.
it's it's an explicit action that you have to take.
Excellent. Let me read off this question we have. It's pertaining to entitlements, if I can. For those who built their entitlements for Oracle database without the unlimited license flag originally, before the option was available, is there any issue turning that flag on in SAM representing those unlimited rights properly? Or should the entitlements be rebuilt?
That's an interesting question. So I think the compliance results will change if you select the unlimited license, because your entitlement moved from non-compliant to compliant. But from a calculation perspective, I don't believe a lot would change. Actually, it'll still report the same license obligations that you had before, right? There are some nuances around handling if you have a mix of compliant and, mix of EULA entitlements and non-EULA entitlements. So if you have that scenario, you might need to kind of, that might cause a little bit of, from a reporting perspective, right, on your license workbench, you might have to kind of manage that to just see, which databases are being covered by the EULA and which ones are being covered by the non-EULA, right? You'll have to kind of point those entitlements to the right database based on your contract. So again, on the EULA side, you might have territory restrictions, you might have product restrictions, you might have legal entity restrictions on where you can use the EULA. And so when you set up the EULA, you'll hopefully have already kind of put in your allocations correctly.
Yep.
Right? So if you've done that, then your non-EULA entitlements should not interfere with that. Okay, because you've correctly allocated. But if you haven't done the allocations, now you might have to kind of think through how you want to manage those two. And if you need further help on that, please reach out. We can have a session to understand, your unique situation, and we can take you from there.
No, that's great. Thanks for that, Rohit. So sticking on the topic of entitlements, a little bit more generic here. Let's clarify a little bit on entitlements. Are they manually created or fed in through a procurement system? That's the first question. And is there any interface with Oracle directly that we can use to import those entitlement data instead?
Yeah, you can do both. You can either manually bring it in, or you could import it using the spreadsheet import capability that we have.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of procurement systems, I think it's worth noting that we are looking at direct integrations with procurement systems. Currently not right now with the Oracle procurement system, but there is appetite to look into that further. Any comments around that that you can make at this time, Rohit?
Yeah, I think we're still in early stages of just kind of looking at that. We are looking at machine learning capabilities to kind of also just be able to scan your contracts and just, ingest that data. We also have, we're releasing this year under Safe Harbor an integration with the Coupa procurement system. So to bring in your entitlements from there. And we have other procurement vendors on the roadmap, on the near-term roadmap as well. So we are looking at a lot of audit. We understand this as a pain point. A lot of customers have that pain point to, on how do we bring in all these entitlements? How do we keep them maintained? And so we're looking at that challenge head on as we speak.
Awesome. Great. And I'll just mention to the audience, if you are interested in exploring some of that information with us, that being testing those procurement systems or anything like that, let us know, reach out to us. I would be happy to collaborate and work together as we build those features out. Let's turn our way to then, I see some questions on virtualization, Rohit. So I'll read this one. I had issues specifically with IBM AIX platforms not reporting their dynamic status or their max core pools. I cannot confirm this documentation that Oracle GLAS module collects this data to properly license database on LPARs that are dynamic and may or may not have been limited in their max cores availability. Does GLAS do this? And is it using GLAS specific table, or is the data from the LPAR or CI record?
Yeah, so GLAS, the GLAS script pretty much just looks at, your deployment data, right? And it's what LMS, the Oracle LMS script uses. So it should look at your IBM LPAR, it should look at your databases deployed on all the various different technologies, right? When you mentioned IBM LPAR dynamic partitions, where the capacity, I believe the capacity of the LPAR can vary and change, right? The discovery schedule that you have that's running should be able to kind of pick that up as that changes to correctly report on the usage. Now, I think the question might be that if you're reporting Oracle usage, you might need to pick the peak capacity, right? You'll have to pick the highest CPU core information. So that's not something that the tool would do unless your discovery picks it up. So that we might have to build something additional for you to be able to kind of manage that, so that we track that peak that was achieved and then it dropped back to, the old one. So that's something that would be an enhancement in the tool.
Got it. How about host affinity? Is that represented in the raw data?
Yeah, so I think not in the GLAS raw data. That's host affinity is not reported there. But host affinity is defined in the system. Our discovery tool picks up all these VMware host affinity relationships and stores that in our CMDB. So we have, outside of the GLAS tool, the discovery patterns that you use will discover that information and track it for you.
Fantastic. Let's jump into some questions on WebLogic.
And Victor, just to piggyback on that, I just wanted to quickly show the audience just the health checks.
Oh, sure.
I think this is something that's powerful and very, very useful.
Yeah, bring it up.
For our customers. And I think, so this is the workspace, right? The software asset workspace. So we have this new, the software asset success portal that we've built. And so if you look at the software asset success portal, there is this health check capability. And I've clicked on these checks available, and it's opened up this for database server. And let me just take you one step back to show you when I click on that, what happens. So you have these health checks for all these different software, SQL, Windows. I know we're talking about Oracle, so I'll just click on database server to show you the available health checks. So we have all these checks on edition, cloud. I think somebody mentioned cloud attributes, entitlements, cloud relationships. Here, this IBM LPAR hard partition relationship discovery, Solaris zone. So all of these are available for you. So when these script checks run, it'll give you the findings for them, right? And you can then address those findings.
That's great. How would you put that in a procedure? So let's say you have installed SAM, you have discovery working, you've put together all your credentials, you started collecting data. At that point, would you do your configuration health check, or at what point in the journey, if you will, would you start looking at that?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is, once you set up your discovery, right? You've got your discovery set up, and you've completed all your credentials, you're getting the data in. At that point, you'd run your health checks, right? If you look at the a lot of the health checks are based on just making sure your discovery data is correct, right? The addition discovery, the LPARs that I showed you. And these are the findings. I just clicked on the findings to show you how it reports issues that are found across your environment, right? And on both on the database as well as on the options. And that's when you kind of run through and start to fix these discovery issues one by one, make sure you have clean discovery to go into software asset management. Then you can look at your software asset management health checks. Once you run compliance, put in your entitlements, create your software models, right? You run your software asset management health checks, and that'll then give you the next set of configuration issues in your environment that you might need to resolve.
Got it.
Yeah, sure.
Here's another question. When we talk about BYOL licenses, what about Oracle BYOL license to AWS RDS? Are database options discovery relevant with that setup? What is ServiceNow's best practice to collect that information?
Yes. Database options are relevant, but not all of them are. For example, I think change management, patch management, database lifecycle management. Some of those options may not be relevant, like active data card and advanced compression as well are not relevant on the cloud, but several of the others are. And so for the ones that are relevant, we will collect that information and manage them for you.
Okay. Another question here I see is CAL-based licenses for Oracle. Is that a thing? What's the relationship of CAL with Oracle licensing?
Yeah, so I think the named user plus Oracle named user plus licensing is pretty much a client access license type of metric. Although it's slightly different from a client access license because you're just not just licensing the users, but you're looking at the capacity of the machine that those users are connected to, right? The application that you're running. And then there's minimums based on the machine and the capacity of the machine based on the cores, right? So you license the greater of the two, the users connected or the capacity of the machine times the minimum. So that's the difference between the named user plus and the CAL, the traditional CAL license metric that you see with Windows Server.
Got it.
And yes, we do support that.
Excellent. And is there anything in the product itself that needs to be done when it comes to named user plus and how to manage those?
Yeah, so you create your entitlements, right, on in the system.
Mm-hmm.
And for those entitlements, I think if you allocate them to specific machines on which you want to use those named user plus entitlements, I think you need to do that. You'd also be able to then, if it's database, we'll be able to automatically query that database and pull the users from that database for you, right? If you're connected to a database, it'll automatically pull the users and maintain that user list for you.
I see.
And we also add additional things on top of that where we, if it's, for example, a system user that doesn't need to carry a license, right? That won't be counted towards a license for you. So we already have that intelligence built in. It'll also flag multiplexing users on that database. So if there's an application connected, it'll flag that. So that's a trigger for you to go and investigate how many users are on the front end of that application because they'll need to carry a license as well. So we do all of that for database. For WebLogic, Java, etc., it's a flat list. You'll have to maintain, since we don't have the ability to kind of pull users from the WebLogic or for Java, that list you'll have to maintain. You can automate that from your Active Directory using the ServiceNow platform capability if you need to.
Fantastic. Got it. All right, here's a question. Is it possible to see what core factor has been applied to an installation? For example, Enterprise Edition in the license workbench.
Yeah, I think there's it's one of the columns that's available for you. I think in one of the database table, one of the CMDB tables that's used for the license usage. So you should be able to look at the core factor that got applied.
Okay. Before we move into the next closeout segment here, Rohit, is there any questions that you see in the Q&A that you think is worthwhile to jump in on? I tried my best to cover as many different topics as we could, but if there's anything here that you think is good for everybody's knowledge, please feel free to bring that to light.
Yeah, from Jen Dalton, is a ServiceNow agent required to collect the data for GLAS? No, you don't need an agent. The Oracle GLAS app can function without that. Or can other agents like SCCM do this collection? I think I've addressed the SCCM question already.
About with respect to security concerns, has there, with SCP having security concerns, has there been any decision to make Echo the standard for Oracle GLAS?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't catch that.
The question says, with SCP having security concerns, has there been a decision to make Echo the standard for Oracle GLAS?
Yeah, I'm not sure I follow the question. Maybe just email me and I'll, with more details on that, and I'll try to get an answer back to you. I'm not sure who asked the question, but you could just email one of us and we'll try to get you an answer for that.
Sounds good. All right. Very good. So let's close off the Q&A section for that. There's a lot of information that we have to share with everybody, not least of which is this recording. But for trainings, we do recommend folks take SAM fundamentals training. Add to that things like import entitlement basics for your entitlements, normalization, get a good grasp around how that actually works and functions. Then look at discovery basics, because you're going to want to know how patterns work. And then finally, troubleshooting any reconciliation. So if I were to say, what are the core training modules any SAM admin should do with respect to our product, these would be the ones. With respect to Oracle documentation, we have a lot of guides and white papers out today. We're actually working on additional ones as well. But ones you want to look at would be the Oracle licensing for SAM. So this is a lot of the stuff that Rohit covered today. You can start reading on some of that. We have a white paper on Java as well. And then we also have some kind of generic, but still very important if you're looking at Oracle implementation. What are some best practices around implementing SAM? And then how does the content library and content service work? Because you're going to want to make sure that you have all your discovered installations normalized so that you can do reconciliation properly. The last thing I'll say is we have a community site where we post a lot of information, blogs, and documentation. So there's a summary on there for how to set up for success, as well as those trainings and links to those trainings, like I mentioned earlier today. And then those documentation that we just showed, we're going to also post that in a community post with this recording. So you can always go back, review this recording, and make use of the documents that we'll post. That's all that we have for today. I want to thank everybody for their time. Rohit, always a pleasure to have you on and answering questions. I like the fact that we have a lot of customers joining us from around the world. So just want to say thank you, and we'll see you all on the next one. Bye, all.